Never argue again. How Stoics handle provocation with grace. There is a quiet strength in the person who refuses to be dragged into arguments. You've seen them. In a heated room, voices rising like a storm. One person remains calm, unshaken, silent, perhaps even offering a slight smile as others try to provoke them. They don't flinch. They don't respond in kind. And oddly enough, their silence feels louder than the shouting. What kind of power is that? It's not the absence of emotion. It's not passivity. It's discipline, self-mastery. And it's something the ancient Stoics understood better than most. In a world obsessed with being right, the ability to not argue is a rare and beautiful form of strength. The Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, did not live in quiet monasteries or peaceful retreats. They lived in the middle of chaos. Aurelius was an emperor, dealing with betrayal, politics, and war. Epictetus was a slave. Seneca was a political advisor constantly navigating the manipulations of Nero's court. And yet, they all preached a radical idea. You don't have to respond to every insult. You don't have to prove yourself in every conversation. You can walk away without a single word and still retain your dignity. Even elevate it. To the Stoics, the true battle was never with other people. It was always within. Epictetus once said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." In other words, no one can make you angry unless you hand them the keys to your peace. We live in a society that thrives on provocation. From politics to social media to personal relationships, there is always someone ready to poke the bear, to test your patience, to throw a jab just to see if you'll bite. And most of us, we take the bait. Why? Because it feels good, for a moment. There's a rush when we defend ourselves. A temporary high when we clap back or win the argument. But the price we pay is subtle, corrosive. We lose control, we feed our ego, and we get dragged further into emotional chaos. The Stoics saw this clearly. Arguing wasn't just a waste of time, it was a trap. A subtle surrender of self-control. Let's pause here for a moment and imagine a familiar situation. You're in the middle of a conversation. It starts off civil, but suddenly, the other person says something passive-aggressive. Maybe it's a criticism, maybe it's a sarcastic remark. You feel that spark inside your chest, the urge to respond, to correct them, to not let them get away with it. Your pulse quickens, your jaw tightens, you prepare your rebuttal. But what if, in that exact moment, you stopped? What if you chose not to respond? What if you let the words fall to the ground like pebbles? Not weapons? That isn't weakness. That's emotional strength. It's easy to react. It's hard to remain composed. The Stoics trained themselves daily to respond, not react, to pause and reflect before choosing an action. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never a need to get worked up or to trouble your soul." No opinion. That's such a foreign concept to us now. In a culture that worships hot takes and instant responses. But it's also one of the most liberating truths we can embrace. You don't need to have an opinion about everything. You don't need to get pulled into every battle. Some provocations don't deserve a reply. Most, in fact, only exist to pull you down to their level. There's a story about Socrates, a philosopher the Stoics admired deeply. One day, A man came to insult him in public. He shouted, ridiculed, and tried everything to get a rise out of Socrates. But the philosopher remained calm, quiet. Eventually, the man gave up, frustrated. Someone asked Socrates, "Why didn't you respond?" He replied, "If someone invited you to a feast, and you chose not to go, would you be at the feast? No. Then if someone insults me and I choose not to accept it, am I insulted?" That's the grace of detachment. The refusal to accept every invitation to conflict. And this grace isn't passive. It requires active courage. Because when someone attacks you, it takes strength to stay grounded. It takes vision to see the bigger picture. It takes humility to realize that not every battle is worth your energy. Think about the relationships in your life. How many arguments were truly necessary? How many times did you fight not because you needed to, but because your pride was wounded? Pride whispers. They can't talk to you like that. Ego demands, prove them wrong. But wisdom asks, what do you gain by responding? And what do you lose? The Stoics would advise this: guard your peace like a treasure. Don't give it away freely to people who haven't earned your respect. When provoked, your silence can say more than your words ever could. It speaks of control. It shows you are not a slave to impulse, but a master of your inner world. It's important to note, Stoicism doesn't mean being a doormat. It doesn't mean tolerating abuse or injustice. It means choosing your battles wisely. It means responding from principle, not impulse. Seneca once wrote, "A quarrel is quickly settled when deserted by one party. There is no battle unless there be two." Walking away doesn't mean losing. It means rising above. There's dignity in restraint. There's honor in not engaging with those who only seek to drain your energy. It's the same reason great generals sometimes avoid war, not out of fear, but wisdom. They understand the cost. Your peace is precious. Guard it. If you practice Stoicism, truly, not as an aesthetic, but as a way of life, your goal is not to win arguments. Your goal is to win yourself back from the pull of ego, the grip of anger, the seductive fire of revenge. You stop being reactive, you become reflective, and in that shift, something amazing happens. You start noticing how few things actually deserve your attention. How many insults are projections? How many criticisms are confessions? How often people's anger has nothing to do with you, and everything to do with their own battles. The Stoic response isn't cold. It's compassionate. It says, "I see your pain, but I don't have to join it." It says, "I can respect you, even if I disagree." It says, "I refuse to lower my energy just to match your chaos." That's the grace of the Stoic. A quiet strength that radiates in the face of noise. You don't need to be a philosopher to practice this. You don't need to wear a toga or quote Latin. You just need to begin noticing. The next time someone tries to provoke you, pause. The next time you feel the urge to argue, breathe. Ask yourself, what is truly at stake here? Is my peace worth trading for this moment of anger? Most of the time, it isn't. And in that pause, in that breath, you reclaim something sacred. Not victory over someone else, but victory over yourself. That's what Stoicism teaches us. Not how to win arguments, but how to transcend them. Because real power doesn't shout. It doesn't rage. It doesn't argue. Real power chooses silence, and lets the storm pass without ever stepping into it. So never argue again, not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough not to need to. And that strength is unshakable.